Welcome, everyone, to episode 3 of the Temporal 3 podcast. Lucky to be joined today by my co-host, Charles. Good morning, Charles.
Morning, Bryan.
And our guest today is Mr. Ed T-Bone Hayden. Good morning, Ed.
Hey, good morning, Bryan. Nice to be here.
Well, first of all, guys, I want to start off talking about our favorite subject in the whole world, NICET. One of the things that you are allowed to do with the references that you bring into your NICET exam is to highlight them. So NICET says specifically in their rules that highlighted references are permitted. Now, they don't allow handwritten notes, specifically say no handwritten notes, but you are allowed to highlight. Charles, what would you typically highlight in your codes and references?
Well, for me, I'd be conservative in highlighting. I'd highlight specific words or numbers. I'd refrain from highlighting full sentences or paragraphs.
Absolutely.
Makes sense.
Makes sense,
Makes
yeah.
sense.
Ed, how about you? What is your highlighting strategy?
Well, I think color coding is king with highlighting myself. I like to be able to color code certain things. For example, like for definitions, I may use yellow. That would draw my attention to it. If I have tables or other exceptions within the code, I may use like an orange or a green for that. So the whole idea behind highlighting for me is pick a system and stick with it throughout the whole highlighting scheme of your book. It makes it easy for you when you're going to look for something during the exam.
Absolutely.
So do you try and get a rainbow effect in your highlighting with all the colors of the rainbow?
Yes, and I also have My Little Pony on standby if need be, which gives me the ultimate rainbow for my NICET exam. Actually, I wear My Little Pony rainbow when I take my NICET exam so I can rip it open when I pass the exam.
How cool.
Yeah.
Not bad, right?
Yeah.
That's not a strategy. That's a
sprinkle
personal
rainbow
thing.
on everyone.
Of
So
course.
it makes you a chick magnet, man.
Hey, you know what? I couldn't get any more than that right now.
There you go. I personally, I'm with Charles as far as numbers and units of measure, keeping highlighted to a minimum. One of the things that NICET we know loves, being an engineer-driven organization, is numbers and units of measure.
They love it.
Yep. And but I'm more of a fan of the unicolor highlighting. I'm just not organized enough to be able to color code my highlighting. But I see what you're saying, Ed. I certainly could see the value of that for sure.
Highlighting your code book, the code book isn't a coloring book, first of all. It's about creating a kind of a pathway or roadmap to get through your code while you're taking the exam to make it work. We all know that they time us on this exam, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep, absolutely.
Is it important to take your time and use it wisely? I think so.
Yep. Definitely good.
And Ed,
hey,
do you use colored pens to underline as well?
Are you allowed to use a pen in that? Can I use a pen in my code book?
For underlining?
Yeah.
Yes.
I can. So I can actually underline with a blue pen too if I wanted to.
I would say the NICET may interpret that as a handwritten note.
They don't actually. I've actually talked with NICET about that very subject. Underlining is A-OK.
Well, to answer your question, Chuck, no, I don't use a pen at all because I think once I start using a pen in my code book, I want to write a note. And we know personal notes are not allowed,
Now, is that only in English? Can you write in other languages? Is that permitted or no?
Portuguese?
Maybe.
You think the proctor might read that and say that's just part of the book? What do you think, Bryan?
What do you think?
I don't know.
Well, I don't know. If they don't understand what language, they might accept it. I don't know. That could be a possibility.
Well, I think by answering your question, Chuck, I think any kind of writing, whether it be in Latin, Hebrew, Greek, whatever it might be, I don't think it's allowed. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You're wrong.
Guys?
No writing is allowed.
No writing is allowed.
No handwritten notes.
Bingo.
Yep.
What's going to happen if you have a handwritten note in that code book?
You're going to get told.
I've heard various stories, Bryan.
I was going to say various stories. We heard from one student who was forced to erase all his handwritten notes because fortunately they were in pencil, and he was forced to erase them before taking the exam. What a difficult situation that is. Another student who had him in pen who was told, sorry, that book stays in the locker or stays in your
Oh,
vehicle, doesn't go into the exam. And he did not pass, by the way, and he was not happy.
And I had one student who was told he could rip out the pages with handwritten notes and bring the rest of his code in.
Wow.
One
that's
thing
not the
that's
number one
important to
answer.
note is I am not a NICET policeman. Bryan, have you been officially deputized as a NICET policeman yourself?
I was previously, but I retired from it. Yeah.
I see. Ed, how about you?
Nah, I only policed in the Morgantown area, not any place else.
Yeah, we can tell you stories about what the proctors do, but we cannot specifically speak to how your proctor will enforce the NICET requirements.
Excellent point, Charles. You know, the proctor is the AHJ of the exam, and when you get to that test center, it's their interpretation of the requirements. Now, one thing you can do, or two things you can do, first of all, is bring the page from the NICET website. You can print it out. It's a PDF of NICET's permitted references and what the reference rules are. Now, in the proctor's defense, Pearson VUE doesn't just do NICET. They do a wide variety of testing for a bunch of different organizations that all have different rules. So they may not be aware of the rules specifically to apply to NICET. So you bring that paper with you, show it to the proctor, say, look, my references are in compliance with the rules. If that still doesn't make them happy, there is a NICET hotline that all the Pearson test centers have that they can call NICET and get confirmation of what the rules are. Strongly encourage people to do both those things because, as Charles mentioned, what we tell you versus what the proctor tells you could be two different things.
Well, that's a really good point you bring up there. I think to sum it up, highlighting a whole page with your highlighter is like putting ketchup on a steak. Technically allowed, but you're missing the point, right?
Absolutely.
Have you seen students in your classes, Ed, that have that every word on every page highlighted?
Not every word, but I think they've missed the whole point of the highlighting to draw your what to it, to draw your attention to specific information, just like I mentioned earlier, definitions, tables, so on and so forth. If you see a sea of blue or yellow, what's going to draw your attention? Nothing. So I think by highlighting a whole page, you're going to wind up wasting a lot of time trying to find something.
Waste a lot of ink.
Highlighting specific things, highlighting things that you want to get to, very critical.
Absolutely.
What do you think?
Absolutely.
Agree.
Yeah, I agree with that. Of course, there is a strategy of highlighting almost everything on the page and then using the white spots to be able to navigate instead of the highlighted spots.
That strategy I'd want to see employed and work successfully.
Yes. Well, I didn't say it would work. I just said that is a strategy.
Love it.
All right, guys. Well, the next topic I'd like to talk about is inspection and testing. NFPA 72 governs inspection and testing of fire alarm systems. If you are a NICET fire alarm level 1 test taker, that's going to be a pretty significant part of your exam. And even in other categories, for example, water-based INT at level 2, they allow NFPA 72. They'll ask you some 72 questions about INT in the special hazards exam. 72 is allowed in a couple of the exams. So even it's not just fire alarm that you will be seeing questions about inspection and testing. And the applicable chapter of NFPA 72 for inspection and testing is Chapter 14, which is inspection, testing, and maintenance. And within that chapter, there are two really important tables that we need to be aware of. Charles, what are those tables?
One is an inspection table. Every fire alarm piece of equipment has its own inspection frequency. And the second one is a testing table. And the testing table has frequencies for all fire alarm equipment too. And they're not necessarily the same thing.
What do you mean? It's both. The question that I get would be, this the same thing, right? We're doing testing and inspection, the same table, right?
Only in our book.
Negative. Yeah, and they actually look
Tell
very
me why.
similar.
Yeah.
They look very similar, the two tables. The testing table looks just like the inspection table and vice versa. When you answer a question, and we see this so frequently in our practice exams, people write in and say, hey, your answer's wrong. I found it in the code right here. The inspection frequency is annually, not semi-annually or whatever. Bryan, how many times do you see that?
At least once a week, where people look at that and I have to, and 9 times out of 10, I've already been challenged about that question and say, well, make sure you're in the right table. And it's a great learning experience for our students because it's an easy mistake to make. And in the field, okay, you have the option of phone a friend, call the AHJ, contact NTC instructor and say, hey, what's this requirement? But in the NICET exam, we don't have any of those luxuries. So you got to be able to navigate those tables. And it is a fairly common occurrence that people will read from the wrong table in our practice exams. And unfortunately, I suspect in the NICET exam as well, and you get enough of those wrong, don't pass the test.
Well, and it's happened to me that I've done exactly that on the NICET exam, and I feel good because I found the answer. It's right there in the code. I think I'm right.
Yeah, but I tell you what, let's talk about how that is in the field. What if you're working out in the field and you're in the wrong table? Is that going to be an important thing to be able to complete a successful inspection and testing?
Yes.
Guys? Yeah, of
absolutely.
Course it is. Absolutely knowing how to work. So what I'm trying to say is it's important to know how to find that information in the code, correct?
Yep. Absolutely.
How do you find it? Based upon the question in your NICET exam? If I have a question is, what's the visual inspection frequency? What table are you going to, gentlemen?
1431.
Or how do you test a specific device? What table are you going to?
Testing table.
14432.
So really, it kind of leads you right into the space that you need to go to in those tables. Chuck, right?
Yeah, but I have a question for you, Ed.
Lay it on me.
Mr. Multicolor Highlighter, what color do you highlight inspection and what color do you highlight testing?
Oh, that's a really great question. I have 2 colors. You guys want to think of the first color?
Yellow.
Correct. And I use that for testing methods. And what do I use for visual inspection? Starts with a G, ends with an N.
Green.
Hey, good job, buddy.
Yay, Bryan!
I got one.
Got one. Bingo. Yeah, use both of those colors. And that's a great question, Chuck, because it really draws my attention to those tables. Exactly what it says. And that's what I want when I take my NICET exam. I want to draw my attention to something I can find quickly.
So guys,
when
those
you
two
see the
tables
wrong
we're talking
color,
about,
you know immediately that it's
Go ahead,
testing
Charles.
or inspection. Based on the color, you can tell immediately what table it is.
Yeah, that's correct.
Those two tables we're talking about, 1431, 14432, are they like really separated in that chapter 14 where they're obviously separate tables and very clearly delineated?
Nope.
They're one right after the other with a couple of paragraphs of information. Have we experienced in our classes where students will roll from one table to the next without realizing it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you'll walk around the room and you'll look at the tables that your students are on. You could have a few different selections of what you're looking at based upon the question. And then at that point, hey, what's the question say? Where are you supposed to be? Take a look.
So, Charles, let me ask you from the technician perspective, because you did work for a installation company. What tools should a fire alarm inspection and testing technician have? What are the good tools? What do they need?
Well, one of the most important tools you can have is a multimeter. That's really a critical tool for any kind of inspection, testing, and or service work. For inspection and testing specifically, having a pen or pencil or a way to document your results is incredibly important. Another very important tool, especially if you're testing smoke detectors and heat detectors, is the appropriate apparatus for doing so. And there are several manufacturers out there who make smoke detector testing equipment and heat detector testing equipment. I believe that the code specifically requires manufacturers' recommended testing equipment be used in testing those devices as well.
Yeah, correct.
Yep.
You're right, Chuck.
Yep. And so, depending on the manufacturer, I mean, there's a smoke entry test and then there's a sensitivity test of smoke detectors, but also for heat detectors, it defers to the manufacturer's published instructions. And some manufacturers do say it's okay to use a blow dryer, but some of them may actually call out a particular piece of equipment for the testing. Should you ever use a heat gun for testing a heat detector?
No.
I wouldn't.
How about a
It's
lighter?
too hot.
A lighter.
Can I use a lighter underneath it?
Especially in a hazardous location, right?
Well, I got to tell you, fellas, I've seen that where I've gone and followed up another inspection group, and I've looked at the burn marks under the heat detector.
Oh my gosh.
Can you imagine? I got a short story to tell you about. I had an encounter with a customer, if you don't mind me throwing
Please.
this in. Years ago, when I first started in this industry, I had a customer that he was an overread type of guy, which means that he read everything. And we were getting ready to do a inspection and testing in his building, an 8-story building. And he said, I want my smoke detectors tested exactly the way NFPA tests the smoke detectors. I said, okay. I don't think we want to go that route. I said there's more acceptable ways of testing that we have that are proven methods acceptable. You are listed for this particular purpose. He said, nope, I want you to test it exactly the way. I said, okay. Are you sure? I'm sure. I told one of my guys, go get me a bale of hay, get me a wheelbarrow, and some kerosene. We're going to build a fire inside this place, and we're going to see if the heat detector actually picks up. The guy said, no, wait a minute. I don't want to go that route. I said, well, wait a minute. We're going to put a flash pan test here in your building to see how that smoke detector is going to react. What do you think happened?
He changed.
I wasted about 20 minutes of my life, and I can't get that 20 minutes back, explaining to this guy why it wasn't a good idea. So I showed him in the code, said, this is the way we want to go. And I showed him the particular type of smoke apparatus we had that's acceptable for smoke detectors. And we went that way. We didn't burn the building down. That's the key.
That's important.
It would definitely would have tested the smoke detectors if we did that.
Were you disappointed? Were you looking forward to lighting that thing up?
I wanted to torch that place. I want to be honest with you.
At heart, all fire alarm people are pyromaniacs.
Oh,
my
indeed
God.
we are. I wanted to see the fire trucks roll.
Yep. So had you run a successful inspection and testing business?
I wouldn't go that far.
Well, I would go that far. What are the secrets to somebody who want to run a successful INT business? What are some tips that you would give somebody to start up or run their INT business?
Well, you want me to give you some bullet points based on
Please. Yes,
my
sir.
experience? Okay. I guess really you have to know your market. You have to know your market. The insurance carriers, the authorities having jurisdiction, property managers all need you more than they realize, first of all. And there's a reason for that. The code's very specific about when devices and fire alarm systems shall be tested. And this is your opportunity to keep your customers' building safe and to explain that to them to sell it off. I don't want to get into too much as far as the contracts go, but you need to sell contracts, not one-off contracts. Because, a $2,500 annual contract is worth $250 calls, to be honest with you. So you have to be smart of what you're doing. I also bundle my services together, honestly. Alarms, sprinklers, extinguishers, they do emergency lighting. I like to call myself the Walmart of fire protection. So,
are you the greeter?
I'm that age, so we don't need to take it any further.
I can imagine you as a greeter, Ed.
Yeah, I check in your receipt to make sure everything that you flipped underneath your cert is shown, right? Uh, Documentation is very critical. You guys mentioned documentation earlier based upon that. Chapter 7 in NFPA is a very critical chapter for us. That if it's not signed, dated, and stored, guess what, guys? It didn't happen. So make sure your documentation is right there. It's important also to market yourself and build relationships with the AHJ. I've spent years doing that. First name basis. They all know when I started instructing for NTC. Charles, how long ago has that been?
Oh
Many,
gosh.
You
many
can't
years
count that
ago.
high.
Yeah, decades.
I do remember sitting in a hotel room in 2001 or sometime prior to that when, anyway, I've worked hard at building a lot of relationships. And based upon what I've learned working for NTC, I've also been able to express that to the AHJs, that they've come to me for information at times, which is satisfying to me. And also, I also serve on the appeals board of fire alarm code in the city of Morgantown. So I share that board.
Awesome.
NTC has brought me to that level by learning how to use the codes. So
Fantastic.
Another last thing I'll get to, which is really important for you building a business, is protect yourself and your business with liability and errors and omissions insurance. One lawsuit can definitely eat more than your lunch money. So just be careful. So that's really, in a nutshell. I can go on, but in a nutshell, that's how I've built my business and how I've sustained that business. I've also found that this business, the inspection and testing, has sustained my company when installations have gotten slower. We were able to bring revenue into my business, keep the stream of revenue working in my business when installations and money got tight for a lot of people, because inspections and testing are required by code. That's something you can sell as a requirement. So
Absolutely.
hope that answers your question.
Certainly does, and especially and you make a great point. When construction slows down, INT doesn't. Systems still have to be inspected and tested. So your mention of AHJ leads me into our next topic of conversation, which is questions from the field. And we got a question from the field recently about application of the 0.7 rule, which is typically used for spacing of smoke detectors in corridors. And where you'll find an illustration of the 0.7 rule, this is a great place to get familiar with it, is in NFPA 72 and figure A, that's Annex A 176311G. And there is an illustration there that shows the application of the 0.7 rule. Charles, how does that apply to corridors? Why does it apply to corridors?
Corridors are defined as something more narrow than 30 feet wide. So when we have a space that's more narrow, the code recognizes that smoke travels differently there, and we're allowed to spread our detectors out a little farther. So spacing in a narrow space can be reduced. The amount of that increased. The amount of that increase is based on how narrow the corridor is. And that diagram you're talking about, Bryan, goes down to a corridor of 10 feet wide and up to a corridor of 25 feet wide. So once we hit 30 feet, normal room spacing of 30 feet between detectors applies. But for narrower spaces, we're allowed to extend our spacing out and potentially save detectors.
Absolutely. And Charles mentioned it goes down to 10 feet. And I'll give you an example of the amount of extension that you pick up with this. With a 10-foot wide corridor, according to that figure, A176311G, you can extend your spacing in corridors of those smoke detectors to 41 feet. That is an additional third, over an additional third of spacing, which allows you to use less corridors or less smoke detectors, in that application. So it definitely can be a time saver in the field. But Ed, you have some real world experience with the 0.7 rule. Would you tell us
Oh,
about your real world experience?
oh,
Or am I bringing up painful memories for you?
oh, I feel I'm going to need to have the cream ointment put back on in a little bit. Uh, it's still sore, trust me. Just going back years ago, fellas, I was just certified at level 1, and I had to learn about 0.7 rule and how I could apply it in my business. Critically being because I was able to save my customer money because I can use less detection and still have the coverage that's required by an FTA for my detector. My wife had mentioned to me that she has a girlfriend that's starting a daycare center and she's going to need fire protection. So, of course, I went there, and a good friend of my wife went to college with her, so on and so forth. I proceeded to lay a system out for her, and I laid out my smoke detection using the 0.7 method. So I was able to take the 0.7 rule and actually spread my detectors out further, not needing as many within the corridor. First thing I had to do, of course, was submit that, right? You submitted for plans and approval for the AHJ. AHJ came back and approved my 0.7 after, I tried to explain, when I explained to the AHJ, he didn't understand exactly what I meant by the 0.7 rule. When I showed him the annex figure 176331G, it was like I pulled, the math out of the fire code hat. He actually understood it at that point, He understood, wow, I didn't realize. And he approved it. Of course, it was in the code. Long story short, put the system in. Another AHJ comes in to do the final inspection for the certificate of occupancy. That's always a very tense day for a lot of fire alarm guys. If you guys out there listen to me, notice, because you want to make sure everything is correct, that you've tested. Sometimes things you've tested prior to the AHJ getting there don't work when he gets there. So, fortunately, we tested everything. AHJ comes in to look at, he said, those smoke detectors, they're spaced way too far apart in this corridor. We had a 4-story building now with a cookie cutter, all 4 sides, smoke detectors running through all the corridors. Requirement based upon the occupancy type. He said, give me a ruler. I'm thinking to myself, here we go. This guy now wants me to measure my detector spacing. Measured it out. It was like 39 to 40 feet. I can't remember the exact number. But he said, I'm not going to pass this. He said, I want these 30 foot on center. I said, well, wait a minute. Here is what I was approved by the plans and review. He said, I don't care what they said. I'm here. This is my territory. You're going to put him at 30 foot on center, or I'm not opening this building up. And he walked away. What do you think happened, guys? What do I do?
After you went into full panic mode?
I went into full panic mode, and I went to 10. I was there throttling it down, thinking, how are we going to fix this? So how we fixed it, I sent a couple of my guys up to Pittsburgh, picked more detection up, and thank goodness we were using a adjustable system that we could handle on those SLC loops that we ran, and we brought them in closer together. Worked the whole weekend. Guy came back Monday, wrote it off, disregard granted. I didn't charge my customer. I thought that was the right thing to do because I should have been more aware that the AHJ sometime, even though it's in the code, the 0.7 rule sometimes isn't accepted by the authority out in the field.
That AHJ would fail the NICET test.
He would. He absolutely would. I mean, it's not guesswork, guys. It's not geometry. It's geometry based. Well, actually, algebra.
Well, and the thing is that AHJ, because he's an AHJ, he doesn't have to take the NICET exam.
No, but a lot of you're absolutely right. A lot of AHJs, when you show them that you are NICET certified, I think you develop a little bit more respect out in the field.
Absolutely.
And not only with the AHJ, but also with your customer too, because I advertise that we're NICET certified in my company. I think it's an important thing to have. And it's an accomplishment that you need to have on your professional resume for sure.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And that has been my experience with our customers as well, that the AHJs, it definitely buys you a degree of credibility with them. Charles, has that been your experience as well?
For sure. And one thing that's really important, this is something we say all the time, the AHJ isn't going to grade your NICET test. And NICET is not going to come out and inspect your jobs. So you need to be aware of the code requirements specifically for the NICET test, and you need to be aware of the AHJ requirements specifically for out in the field. They're two different things.
Boy, that's the truth. That's a good point, Joe.
NICET world versus real world, guys. We got to know two different things. And boy, if you're doing business in multiple jurisdictions, you may have to know a lot more than two.
And those requirements are going to change in multiple jurisdictions, guys. You have to be aware not only of what the requirements are, but in multiple jurisdictions, what code version or what code are they using in order to make justification of these systems that are going to be installed in these occupancies.
Absolutely. Well, Ed, I appreciate you sharing your painful memories with us of the 0.7
All
rule.
right. It'll take me the rest of the day to calm down. Trust me.
All right, everyone. Well, again, guys, I appreciate you joining us. I do want to comment on Ed's beautiful collection of guitars behind him. Ed, do you have a side hobby of that you endeavor or indulge in?
Indulge in? Well, yeah. Actually, a I want to say quasi-talented musician, guitarist, keyboard player, saxophone player, and a bass player. But these are some of my guitars that I have. I have a total of 22 total, and I got 14 hanging right now on the wall. Yeah, I'm a musician for 63 years. I started out at age, I'm not going to tell you, because I age myself at that. Started out at a young age, and been playing for quite a while. Yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah, it's a collection that has taken me years to accomplish.
Multi-talented, great instructor, and great guitar player, great musician.
And sings as well.
And
he specializes in Sir Mix-a-Lot.
Oh yeah, Sir Mix-a-Lot. He's my number one guy. He really is. Really is. Number one. Absolutely.
Ed, if you didn't have the hand injury going on, we'd get you to play out and play Baby Got Back for us. But
well, I would say I'd sing it for you, but I think we'd have to edit that part completely out of what we're doing right here.
Our producer.
Although I've heard Chuck sing a few bars every now and then. But
indeed.
Along with me dancing the Can't Touch This.
But here's the thing. Do you have the parachute pants? That's what makes everything...
I don't, but Kyle does. I'm trying to get him to bring them to our conference in Las Vegas this year.
I'll tell you what. That would be worth a trip out there to see that. That is for sure.
All right. Well, I want to thank our listeners for joining us today. I want to thank our participants. Charles, Ed, thank you for taking the time with us today. Please remember to like and subscribe to this podcast to be alerted of future editions. Thank you all again for your participation today, guys.
All right. Thanks,
Brian.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, guys.